Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm glad you're listening today. My name is Sean, and Kyle, of course, is here as almost always. Kyle, what's on your mind today?
I had a recent experience on an airline, and I wanted to share it with you. I was waiting to get off. I use the aisle chair to get on and off the plane.
Sure.
And so I'm the last one to get off on every flight.
Yep.
So I'm waiting there for them to ring the aisle chair on. It's not coming. I'm waiting for a good 20 minutes.
Oh.
And, oh, man, it's not coming.
20 minutes after the plane is empty or 20 minutes from the time the door opened?
That's a good distinction. No, 20 minutes from after the plane is empty. I know there's nobody else on the plane.
Wow.
And so anyway, somebody comes racing in with the aisle chair. I'm like, oh, sweet, someone's here. Well, my first indication that this person had no clue what they were doing is that they came down the aisle towards me with the aisle chair in front of them, right? So usually you back it down
when you're
so
getting
that
off.
I can sit. Yeah, right.
Or yes,
so
sure.
He comes in, zooming down the aisle, and I'm like, you gotta turn around, dude. And so he 3-point turns it into the front of a seat, right? And then turns around. That wasn't that bad, but it was an indication.
Yeah.
He also did not speak very good English, so it was hard to communicate.
Sure.
So he's like, no worries, sir. Don't worry. I got this. Whatever. And I transfer myself. He's grabbing me and pulling me inside. I'm like, no, I got this. No worries. I can get myself from the seat into the chair. So I finally get in there and he starts pushing. And I'm like, wait a second. No straps. He didn't put, and I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get off this plane. So I didn't say anything. The flight attendant was like, I think you should probably strap him in. But he just kept going. So no straps. So I'm hanging on to the sides of the chair just because my trunk stability is not very good, right? That's something with FA. So get off the plane. My wheelchair is sitting right there. And I'm pointing at it, leaning over a little bit, pointing where to put the battery and how to I'm like, just pull me up right next to it. He didn't understand what I was saying.
Yeah.
I was I can pull me up right next to it. No, I'm starting to get frustrated.
Sure.
And he and the gate person are both telling me, calm down. Or not calm down, but everything is going to be okay. They said that multiple times. It's going to be okay, sir. And that just made me even more infuriated, right?
Yeah.
Just shut up and put me in no one knows what they're doing. Anyway, so I'm leaning over, pointing, put my battery right there. And all of a sudden, I leaned over a little too far. And I fell out of the aisle chair. Yeah. And I didn't get hurt.
Sure.
But it definitely, how it is to fall with FA. It just does not look pretty. It looked like I got hurt, probably. And so the flight attendants are a little bit freaking out. I just fell out of the thing. The guy, grabs underneath my armpits and pulls me back into the chair, which is fine, and I'm kind of flailing around at that point. And the flight attendants are just going, are you okay? Are you okay? Oh my gosh. And all this. And finally, I get into the chair and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Do you need anything?" I'm like, "No, I just need to get out of here." So,
wow.
Anyway, I went up and on my way, and it was fine, but it was just a crazy, so I guarantee what happened is that they were calling for some Altair team to come, and they couldn't get anyone. So they grabbed the nearest person,
airport employee,
right, who was willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And because this guy, I mean, really, I could see him being really nice.
Sure,
he was willing to do whatever it takes, even though he didn't know what he was doing. Right.
Sure.
So anyway, it was just another case of not good.
That's amazing. There's so much in there that could be a broken bone or life or death for another individual. One thing you said sticks out to me. They immediately picked you up and put you back in the chair. And one thing we talk about at work, when somebody slips and falls, you do not pick them up right away.
Mm-hmm.
You check in with them because you never know. And moving them around, it could make something worse.
Right. Totally.
And I imagine that's knowing and thinking, assuming whoever fell is probably able-bodied. And I can just imagine the airline. It's obvious you're not able-bodied, but they're quick to manhandle you back to the chair,
Absolutely.
which for you is fine. Yeah. But for somebody else, that could have been really bad.
Wow. Yep, that's a really good point.
So what airport were you at? Typically, and most people know this, when traveling, people that help on the pushing and aisle share and whatnot are typically airport employees or airport contractors. They don't necessarily belong to one airline or another. So.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, all the aisle chair teams are not airline employees. They're like you said, airport or contractor, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't get hurt. That could have been really bad. I'm glad you're home and safe and have a story to tell. I only wish it was on camera.
Newsworthy from dailyprogress.com. Go On, Be Brave documentary captures perseverance in face of ALS. So this woman, Andrea, was diagnosed with ALS, and the evidence tells her that she's going to die in 2 to 5 years. Sure. Just statistics and, what you read online and stuff. And she decides to do everything she can with the time she's given. And she decides to ride on her cattrike a marathon in every single state.
Wow.
All 50 states. So I saw this movie in the theater, really small movie. There must have been 15 people in the theater, but it played in 50 theaters that same night, which was cool. And it played in a theater not too far from me. And it was really incredible. I cried a lot in this movie. There were so many setbacks. She did this whole 50 marathons in 50 states, and COVID happened in the middle of it.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a huge setback. And she had other setbacks as well.
Sure.
And, as you can imagine, so much self-doubt. When you take a swing that big, and when you do something huge like that, there's so much self-doubt. But there's also so much encouragement from others in this movie. And it had all the feels, man. It was triumphant. It was sad. It was amazing.
Wow.
And I highly recommend it. It really gets to the heart of perseverance and being an individual despite your disease. So check it out. Go on, be brave. I'm going to link the documentary in the show notes so anyone can watch it. I think if you give a donation, it opens up the paywall so you can watch it. And really, really great. Andrea, Pete, in the Go On, Be Brave documentary are definitely newsworthy. Sean, a friend is considering a career change. It's a totally different industry. They'd be leaving a job they love and a team they've helped build.
Are you talking third person right now? Are we doing some advice counseling for you, or is it really a friend?
No, this is a true story. This is a friend of mine.
Okay, not you.
No, not me. Not me.
Just clarify.
So this career change, it would be a steep learning curve, but the pay is much better and there is a lot more opportunity for growth. So in some respects, it's pretty clear what direction would be a move in forward.
Sure.
Basically.
Yeah.
But they heard this comment from a friend of theirs that said something like, at a certain age, we should just be grateful for what we have, and we should, serve our time with what we've been given and be grateful.
In other words, settle.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And so that I feel like that's a tempting thing in a lot of different situations.
Yep.
To be comfortable and to settle, like you said. But it's really flawed. I think we can both recognize that the whole idea of this podcast is kind of opposite of that, right? Doing as much as you can with the time that you're given.
Yeah.
No matter what. Down to the very last day, right?
Exactly. We met somebody recently, a new friend, Chris Schlechte, and we'll share more about him in the future. But he used a phrase that was new to me, and maybe it's because I'm old, but he said something to the effect of he's known as the FIO guy. Figure it out. And to me, that speaks to a little bit of everything. Not only ability-wise, you got to figure out how you're going to get to the second floor when the elevator isn't working in a building, or in life, figure out what you want and what you want to achieve. And despite that learning curve, who doesn't want to earn a little more money or, come across more opportunity for forward growth and different opportunities? So even though there's probably a steep learning curve and maybe you're getting into water you've never touched before, figure it out as you go. It's going to be fun. Yeah. Worst case, in my opinion, go back to what you're comfortable with if you crash and burn.
Couple of thoughts there. I really like the example you gave about getting to the second floor, because the temptation is to be like, oh, well, I don't need to go to the second floor. And then all of a sudden you're changing what you want to do in that moment because of your disability or the challenge in front of you. So I love that example, because just figure it out. Don't necessarily change what you want to do, but change how you get there, or how you think about getting there,
or even how you accomplish. So there might be some legit impossibility to getting up the stairs depending on your condition and ability. But that doesn't mean whatever you were going to do up there can't still be addressed or done. Maybe, these are random examples, but let's just say you've got to go get blood work done and the lab is upstairs. Well, if something tells me if you make a couple of phone calls or put up a little stink, the lab employee will come to you with the needle and a what do they call that? Like make your arm tight. Tourniquet, a little sanitizing pad, and their vials to put your blood. Like they too will work with you to figure it out if you put up a push. I'm not saying be mean and aggressive, but if we give up all the time and say, "Hey, never mind, I can't do it," why would somebody else say, "No, wait, we can figure it out for you"? Most people aren't. They're going to say, "Okay, well, if you don't want to, come back next week." Like, they're going to follow your lead. And I think that's true of society. It's human nature.
Absolutely. So, my second thought is a question for you. Does this situation change? Like, say, somebody's thinking about changing careers. It's a steep learning curve and all this stuff. But all of a sudden, they're 75 years old. Does that change your thinking about about the situation?
I don't know your friend or the situation, but if they are contemplating a career change, my assumption is something about that change they're confident about. So whether if somebody came to them and said, "Hey, would you consider applying? Would you consider helping us with X, Y, or Z?" Something about the opportunity has them convinced they can do it. So if there's that element, whether it's somebody came to you or you read the requirements and you check all the boxes or whatever it may be, then go for it. I don't think it matters how old you are.
Yeah, I agree. I knew
Unless
you were going to say that.
And you're trying to be the president of the United States.
Oh, all right.
Like at some point, I mean, there's a reason you can't be in the control tower at the airport over the age of, I don't know, it's like 50 or it's a very low threshold, I believe. Like there's a reason at some level for some restriction, but I don't know that age would change my my opinion.
Yeah. I think this concept relates to a lot of different situations in life. And I think it's something that we came across when we turned 40. You're only a couple months different than me. Older, maybe? I forget. Yeah.
Yep.
A few months older than me.
Yep.
And I feel like we talked about it. Yeah, at least it was going through my head for sure when around the time we turned 40, because it felt like, okay, now the end of life is a little closer than the beginning of life.
Yeah.
However, this principle to never give up ever until the last, even until the last day, it relates to relationships. It relates to career. It relates to everything, I think. Whatever, making friends. Oh, no, it's too late. I just need to sit around in my house and be cool with the rest of my life. No.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to do something, go out and do it.
Yeah. Some thoughts going through my head right now. There's certainly value in sitting still every now and then, and not necessarily pursuing growth at the expense of other things that are important to you. I think of relationships. How many times, whether it's in a movie or just a story, where a husband or wife or somebody in the family, sacrifices so much in order to get that dream job or to get the corner office or to become partner. And in the midst of their 10, 20 years pursuit, they lose connection with their own children or their siblings or something. So I would say, pursue that progress and growth at all expenses. But I would encourage you and me and others to pursue whatever is important to you relative to everything else that is important to you. Like, there's no reason to give up on something just because there's a speed bump in the way.
Yeah. You just made it a lot more complicated and probably a lot more realistic, right?
How? Because complicated how?
Well, before we were like, all right, go after your dreams no matter what the cost. Well, there's more to it than that, right? And that's kind of what you're saying is like you really do have to weigh everything in this situation, which it's true.
I don't remember what I said exactly, but maybe cost isn't the right word. It's be willing to pursue whatever's important to you with consideration of the risk. Maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not. If I'm in an airplane and I'm there to skydive and oh shoot, I forgot my parachute. Okay, I'm not gonna figure it out. I'm going to just stay on the plane and land. Right? We'll try again tomorrow. At all costs, would say jump out the plane and see what happens. But the risk says that'd be really foolish. You probably don't want to do that. I guess that's challenging. It really depends on what you'd be sacrificing. And in context of the conversation with your friend, if the risk is you're not good with computers, like you're probably going to get fired, or I don't know. Like, to me, that's so minor. Like, okay, if I go for it and fail, again, I'll just go back to what I'm good at and pick up where I left off. Like, things are going to be okay. Right. You're not risking your house and home, probably.
Yeah, no one's going to die. Like, if that's the case, then, then it's probably worth giving it a shot.
In my job, it's retail, groceries, so we do hire, I would say, a majority of young people, young to middle-aged. And often, I feel like some of those people, especially early, mid-20s, for them, it's a job. They hear good things. They're like, it's down the street. Let's do it. And there aren't a lot of people that I don't think that come in saying, I'm going to retire here. I would argue a lot of people say, it's probably a great job while I figure my life out, while I finish my degree, while I, pursue whatever else I want to do. And although there are times where I hear people say, oh, I'm going to leave to go try something else, sometimes there's sadness or disappointment, or, in the back of my head, I think, you're going to leave this for that? Like, ugh. But at the same time, there's some excitement because I'm like, good for you. Because you never know what's on the other side until you actually go to the other side. And there's a level of excitement that I get for them in the unknown. Like, good on you for trying. Good on you for seeing what's out there.
Big time. Big time. Because I think at some level, you might always be thinking about what if I would have tried, what if I would have taken that leap, and to give it a shot and realize what it actually is and maybe come back to what you were doing before. That's way better, I would think, than always wondering what would have been.
Yeah. I just saw something on social media within the last couple of weeks, and it's probably unfair, but I cannot remember who the individual was or, what their title is, but I remember Harvard being in their connection. So maybe she's I don't remember. If I can find it, we'll link it in our show notes. But
all right.
It was a brief little video. It was a female, and I want to say she was connected to Harvard somehow. Probably not a professor, but somehow employed or connected. Anyway, she was given this talk or interview, and the whole thing was centered around regret or thinking, oh, I should have done the other thing because maybe that would have been better, or so on and so forth. And she talks about how flawed that thinking is, because had you chose the different option, nothing else would have stayed the same. So in my, I watched it once and I'm paraphrasing, but she was basically saying, if you chose route A as opposed to B, and then get down the road and start regretting it, you can't. To think that B would have been a better choice is flawed, because it would have been a different time frame, a different weather, a different set of circumstances. Not just the choice would have changed, but everything following that choice also would have changed or had a different impact. So you can't compare the two equally. Yeah. And this whole idea with everything associated with that decision you would have made or changed would have been different. There is no way to know that the other choice would have or could have been better. So don't waste your mental energy on that level of regret. And again, in the moment, I was like, oh, wow, this is powerful. But I didn't think about saving it or referencing it later. So I can't give credit where credit is due, but it was definitely a good thought in the moment.
Yeah, and that's such a hard thing when we regret, and when we're thinking about, did we make the right decision or whatever, if it's a left turn in our lives or something like that, and what if, that's so hard. But how do you handle the what if in your life? We all have it. What if this? What if that? What if I would have made a different decision? How do you go about thinking about that and being okay with everything that happens?
Something that I've leaned on personally is related to that train of thought I just shared. Even though you think a certain thing would have been different, you also have to think about all the little things that have come about over the years. This is a far-fetched example, but one coming to mind is my own life and choosing to get married and then choosing to end that marriage. Sometimes I think back to, okay, what if I just would have set aside my personal preferences and desires and just figured out life married to a woman? But hey, at least I would be normal, right? I'd be married, probably have kids, and a normal dude. I'm using that in air quotes, by the way.
Right.
But over the last 15 years or so much else has changed and would have changed. I talk so much about my day job at Nugget. I never would have come around to Nugget had I stayed in my last career and married. And that's nothing to do with the individual, where that's on the painful end of the decisions I made. But I probably never would have been a cruiser, or enjoy cruise vacations. I wouldn't know Sheila. I wouldn't have the kind of friends I have today. If I think about my dad, what if he would have lived 3 or 4 or 5 more years? Okay, that would have changed a lot more than just me being able to go get dinner with my dad every few months. Like, there would have been so many different elements that also would have been impacted by that one difference.
And this to me brings up acceptance. Like, we never know what's going to happen. for the large part of life. There's so many X factors, and just accepting everything that comes our way and doing the best we can with it. Is that ring true?
For me, it makes sense. Like,
yeah, I know. I think it does for me too. I think it's kind of the way to be, because everyone's got so many X factors, right?
Yep. There are X factors to every day.
Yeah, and being able to be like, all right, whatever happens, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to make the best of it. That's the way to be, I think.
I read something a while ago from a communication coach. Her name is Lisa Nichols, and I've shared about her before in a couple of my columns, but one quote I read that has stuck with me for a couple of years now is, what are you willing to let go of at the risk of getting something greater? So for whatever it's worth, I would give that message to your friend. You know,
right.
Is it worth the risk? If so, go for it. Because, well, we talked about what's the opportunity cost. That your friend could stay right where they're at right now and settle, so to speak. Or maybe take a chance, and maybe in a year they're debt-free, or maybe in a year they're buying a mansion, maybe in a year they're able to travel more, maybe in a year they're able to pursue that thing they've always put off because it's so expensive or it's so time-consuming or so on. You never know. What are you willing to let go of at the risk of getting something greater?
Yeah, and we usually can predict fairly accurately what we're going to get if we don't make a move, right?
For sure.
If we stay in our spot, we can pretty well know what we're going to have in a year or 5 years or whatever. Yeah. But if we make a move, there's a possibility of something much greater.
Well, God, all of it is good food for thought. I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm glad you brought this topic to the forefront. And I wish the best for your friend in whatever decision they choose to make. At the end of every episode, we like wrapping up with a thank you note, an expression of gratitude in order to help keep us grounded and grateful. So, Kyle, who's your thank you note going out to today?
Well, I want to repeat this one. You know, it wasn't in the thank you note section a few weeks ago when I mentioned my driving instructor, Colette. But, you know, I just wanted to thank her for getting me through the driving test and for helping me pass and for putting up with all my BS in the meantime. Ultimately, we were a successful team, and I'm so grateful for that.
Is she the one that told you not to cross the lines when you're driving?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Colette, for reminding Kyle how to drive safely. Well, Kyle, I'm saying thank you to my friend Calvin. He's an old college buddy who I was very close with in college, and of course, over the years, we've stayed in touch, but we're not as close. Anyway, he lives in Miami, and since I was there going on a cruise recently, I stayed a couple of extra days in order to experience Miami and hang out with Calvin. And what had originally planned to be a midday snack or lunch turned into an all-day, all-night hangout session with Calvin. He pushed me around the beach, showed me some of the touristy areas, took me out to dinner. We went out to a bar and a club, and we had drinks, and we just had a great time hanging out as if 15 years had never passed. Calvin, thank you for the hospitality and for hanging out with me while I was in Miami. If you're enjoying the show, we would love for you to share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. While you're on the app, we'd also love a review. Feel free to hit those stars and make a little comment. Please visit our show notes at twodisableddudes.com where you can find links to some of the things we talked about today. We look forward to talking at you again next week. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.